Okay. Start with want to just bring out a couple of nyonim with the topic is Kashrus on Stam, Sefer Torah's Tefillin and Mezuzahs. Just to be makdim, the Chassam Sofer in his Chuvas, he brings a story. He usually doesn't bring stories. He brings a story. He went on vacation one day to a far out town, and he met the local soicher, not the local one of the peddlers selling a bunch of mezuzahs, and he passed all of them. And then he went off to the next town and sold them all off. So Sofer writes that they say that there's a cheskes kashrus on Soferim. He says Lo Hayav Lo Nivru. The Shevet HaLevi in Chelik Zayin says kosher came nowadays. So of course we have Gevaldik Soferim today. I'm not going to say not. However, on the other hand, we also have a huge world. We have all the bar mitzvah bachrim, we have the traveling tefillins, we have the country houses, the Florida houses, now there's a new thing, traveling Sefer Torahs already, Nevi'im, Megillas, America, England, Eretz Yisrael, Beit Shemesh has around 10,000 deers in the last 5 years. Where they all coming from? So on one hand, of course, there's a lot of very, very good stuff. On the other hand, just now that there's issues out there, just to bring out a couple of nekudas. The Yashiv used to say that the Shilohs and Tzuras Oisis is like Mayim She'en Lahem Soif. So the first thing is some Sofer, the same Chassam Sofer brings in his Akdama, in his Haskama to the Sefer Keses HaSofer, that Mikanu Lahabo from when the Sefer Keses HaSofer written by the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Since this Sefer came out, I don't let anyone start writing without Rishus based in. We have a new musig called the Chassam Sofer is the first one who, not the first, there is maybe bring someone, but the musig of a Ksav Kabbalah, a license to write, comes from the Chassam Sofer. Now, this thing called the Ksav Kabbalah means that a Sofer learns halachos one time in his life at least and gets tested on it. Now, 50 years ago, I think it was Shevet HaLevi started. He started a new takana together with all the Gdolim of the time. The Charedis and everybody moving that it's every 3 years you need to renew your Ksav Kabbalah. Rabbi or Mordechai Friedlander, Zechron Levracha. I remember one time he said a story about a guy who he came 5 years after his Kabbalah, after he got it, and he said the guy last time knew it so good, so he said, okay, I'll let him go that he came 2 years late. He said he was shocked how little he knew and how much he remembered. I remember I once met a certain Sofer and I asked him, where's your Ksav Kabbalah? And he says to me, I don't have one. I said, what are you doing? He says, but I learned it very good. I said, when? He said, 9 years ago. I said, so he understood where that's going. So I said, but I ask everything. I said, but how do you know what to ask? So by me, I don't know if there's anything that I learned 9 years ago that I remember. So the number one thing a person needs to know about is who is a Sofer. It tells you have a Ksav Kabbalah, B'toikef. No one has to be scared to ask such a question. I know there are people that say, my brother-in-law, my uncle, my this, my that. It doesn't make a difference. It's not an embarrassing question to ask. You're allowed to ask it. It's a normal question. And you should ask it. You should ask it if it's also up to date. There's been recent stories of Soferim that have been forging Ksav Kabbalahs. That's how important it is today to make sure. There was a story recently just to say, most importantly, is if you know who the Sofer is yourself and you know him to be a Yerei Shemayim, that would be even the best. But since Roiv Sofer in the world, Roiv Stam in the world is coming from Eretz Yisrael, around 97%, I would say. There's over 15,000 Sofer in Eretz Yisrael. In the whole New York, Lakewood, Kiryas Yale, there's maybe 500. So most is coming from Eretz Yisrael. I once got a phone call from someone in Lakewood. He called me up. He said to me, he's looking for a pair of tefillin. So I said, it's your first son? He said, no, it's my second son. So I said, where'd you get the first time? He said, I got it from a local Sofer in BMG. I asked him, so what happened? So he said that he once saw him during Seder in the coffee room in BMG. So therefore, he can't take from him anymore. So I said it's probably better that you would take from some Yerushalmi who's writing, with a shirt. Oh, no, I don't know. But obviously, the most important thing is if you know who the person is, you know him to be a Yerushalmi, because nowadays, what's Yerushalmi, I don't really know. Some people think that if you don't vote in the Israeli elections, some people hold if you go to the mikveh every day, some people hold if you have a long beard, a long Shemona Esrei. I think if you have a Ksav Kabbalah, that's at least the olive base of what a Yerushalmi should be. Now, Kol Sheken, when it comes to checking, this goes also for Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzahs. Very important is who is checking it, the Magia. Kol Amar Belivdoi Karezim Meshubuch. It's brought in Poiskim even, 2 checks. Obviously not Meikar Adin, but nowadays the Metzias tells us that the second Hagah always finds after the first Hagah. I think it's brought down in different Shuvas Svarim that sometimes you should do one before the other. Sometimes you even tell the second person, the first person, the second person, because he's going to want to catch after the first person. So the more Hagah, the better. Now, when we're talking about a Hagah, I just want to point out one very important point, that is that the standard Hagah on a Sefer Torah today in Eretz Yisrael again is there's 245 amudim in a Sefer Torah. Now, the average going rate for a magia, a checker, to check 245 amudim is, the going rate in Yerushalayim is 1,800 shekels, around $500. In Ashdod, I heard even 1,200 shekels. That means you're going 245 pages and you're reading every page, every ois, hopefully, for $500, $2 a page. So I sometimes call that you can't even do Shnai Mikra that quick. So a very choshen nekuda which has been tried to be brought out is if you pay the magia according to the hour and not according to the item. You have these people that go to the shuls and they check hundreds of pairs of tefillin in one day, and all the same price. How could it be the same price if one tefillin takes 3 hours, one takes 1 hour? Elamai must be, hopefully they're checking it.
It should take, say, 3 hours to check.
Some pairs of tefillin could take 1 hour, some could take 3 hours. If the sefer doesn't write the way he's supposed to, and he's only trying to write as fast as possible because he's trying to make as much gelt as possible, so then it takes a lot longer for the magia to check it. Very good. It's very good choshen nekuda, because sometimes the first Hagah is really finishing the writing. It's not even called mugad yet, because checking means you check a finished product. But a lot of, unfortunately today, I'm not talking about everyone again, I'm talking about a large percentage, because obviously the ones that are writing quicker is the ones that are writing much more in quantity. And again, someone told me that every week in Lakewood there's another Kita born, so the amount of bar mitzvahs that there are, the amount of tefillin and mezuzahs and sefer Torahs is just spiraling out of control. So that was a very, very important thing. There's a new thing came up in the past couple of years, is the way the sefer writes is with a kulmis, a feather. The past 8 years there's something called a ceramic kulmis, called Shamir, Kulmis Shamir. I think Roiv of all of the poskim nowadays, maybe I think everyone today already holds it's 100% Beseder, and I don't really know if there's enough Kamid anymore, because I think there's maybe 2% of Seifrim that are still holding on to the old feather. There's a lot of milos with the new type of Kulmis, because now it's uniform the whole way through, if you're writing a Sefer Torah especially, so you have the same exact size the whole way through when you have to sharpen all the time, so you could never be exact. It is a milo, and as I said, in halacha, at least all the places that I've spoken with, they all hold that it is 100% muhud.
You don't use computers to check?
We'll get to that, also very important. Just going on to the process, so we spoke about the soifer, we spoke about the magia, we spoke about what he writes with. Now, what does he else write with? He writes with ink, dioi. So, in the past past 15 years, there was like a little problems coming up with ink, dioi, different types of formulas. Some of the dioi was becoming not so black. What's called black? Mr. Brewer writes Tachlis HaShichur. He writes in the Bar Halacha, even at Tzad, that it has to be, B'shas HaKsiva has to be black, not an hour later. So we see that there is a Metzias of Diyoi that becomes blacker as it comes up. How we paskin, I know that Rabbi Yashiv was Machmir Ada Soif with this Mr. Brewer. This is B'shas Ksiva. Later on, like down the road, the Kach Tivoi Shel Diyoi, that it starts turning into colors. It starts turning brown and reddish. Roishim Chaluda. Over here we have in Sivchav Zayin Amachloikis the Pri Megadim and the Chasam Sofer. The Pri Megadim is Machmir, Chasam Sofer is Meiko, Mr. Brewer is not Machriya. I think they say in Tovshin Mem Daled, Rabbi Yashiv changed his tefillin because of this. He wore Reb Nesano Teflinsky's tefillin, and it started to fade. And they say over that Rabbi Yashiv said that I'm not a chosid, and it wasn't written by the Baal Shem Tov, so there's new soy from nowadays, and he got a new pair of tefillin. Okay, that's regarding black. My Rebbe, a Freelander, used to tell me that he once was walking with Rabbi Yashiv, and there was black tar being put out on the streets, Yushalayim, and he turned to his Rebbe and he said to him, "No, is this black enough?" And he looked at him and he said, "I see that there's no one to talk to. It didn't even start to be black enough." Okay, black is definitely Kashrus is a very choshev nekuda, and it is pretty rampant out there that you have ink that is not fully the formula wasn't completely mixed or something. So there was issues. I mean, obviously the best would be if you could get diyoi with a hechsher. Nowadays, not every diyoi has a hechsher, but roiv do. Those that make tagin with a pidiograph, which is a little pen, so they put diyoi that's not kosher, so the poets can speak about it. Shevet HaLevi is very connected it. But I don't know if nowadays our Sefer Torahs are usually being written with diyoi. Hopefully, if it's negate, anyone should always make sure that it's the Sefer himself writing the tagin and not a metayig. And if it is a metayig, then he should be doing it with kosher diyoi and not with diyoi from the shuk. Now going on, we have something called klaf. Klaf is a very choshev nekuda when it comes to writing. Also, Sefer Torah Tefillin Mezuzis. So the first thing is to get a reliable hechsher. Nowadays, it's a multi-million-dollar industry, and it's even though we trust people, however, a hechsher always helps. A reliable hechsher. There's many klav machers today that has a edach haredis on it, and it is highly recommended. There's stories, goyim, and this way and that way. So, we don't need to rely on all the kulas of the old poskim talking about Oimin al Gabov. Today is definitely kedai to have with a hechsher. A new hiddur which came out in the past 30 years, 25 years maybe, is called Avodas Yad. All klaf until hundreds of years ago obviously was made with Avodas Yad, and then when machines started coming in, so machines obviously made it much better. But nowadays the mitzias is that Avodas Yad is just as good, if not better, and it also has milos in Kashrus, meaning there are shilos by a machine where the iris would come out, and then, because even the machine, first a yid puts it in, and then the machine pushes it. And that, according to the Chazon Ish writes, as long as the yid puts it in, and then a monkey, a koif, could even go and mix it around. But the machines nowadays are so big, the iris are so big, you could put 1,000 iris at one time even. It's a big hiddur, and especially by certain types of stam items, like tefillin and Sefer Torahs, where the ibud is either the Rais D'Rabbanan Lishma, is ma'akiv, is much more choshev. Masha came by mezuzahs, the Shittas Rambam, as we all know, it holds that you don't need to have ibud lishma, so it's a much lighter there. If someone would have machine-made klaf for mezuzahs, then for sure he's doing good. And that comes to the next hiddur, which might people heard of, is called klaf bli t'nai, leguf hakdusha. The Rav in his Michtov writes to be makbid on having tefillin, l'shem tefillin, without a t'nai. Nowadays, 99% of klaf is ma'ubid l'shem Sefer Torah, and it has a Hiroda B'Kedusha, like the Mechaber Paskins, and it's all B'Seder Gomer. As I said, the Rav brings a Chumrah to do it by Tefillin, Leguf HaKedusha. And by Mezuzah, though, there are those that go so far to want to get L'Shem Mezuzah. I even heard people doing L'Shem Megillah Klaf. The reason why it's scary to do L'Shem Megillah or L'Shem Mezuzah is because once you do it L'Shem Mezuzah, you can't use it for anything which is a bigger Kedusha. So you have to have big mashkichim, making sure that you don't have it. There was once a Din Torah, I remember about a story with a Sefer Torah, that on the back of the klaf it said L'Shem Tefillin. Now, who is at fault over here? So, at least by the mezuzah, you do have... Yeah. Except if you go to the Nid Yehuda that learns that Sefer Torah and Tefillin is the same Kedusha, but we don't pass them like him, so yeah, L'chayra, L'fi the Mechaber, and Roiv Poiskim, I would say, it's Makiv. By mezuzah, you do have a kula, because the whole inyan of L'Shem Kedusha, for the Guf HaKedusha, is the Kashrus and the Chakiras in the back, that he brings the Beshitas Rambam, and the Rambam holds you don't need Ibul Lishma by mezuzah. So I once tied this to one of the Enkoch of Mendel Atik, and he even agreed. I even helped him get mezuzah, and I saw that he even did it. He took klaf L'Shem Sefer Torah for mezuzahs, and he used it, and he was happy. There's another hiddur that's brought by klaf. I want to just talk about klaf for a while, because klaf is a very important part of stam. Good klaf means good writing. If you don't have good klaf, it doesn't come out good. Therefore, there's a new musag out there called white klaf. I don't know, for all the older people here, remember all the tefillin mezuzahs and sefer Torahs especially would be spotted pigments, because the behemoths didn't change. The only thing that changed was the formulas, the chemicals. They started putting bleach inside the ibud, and when you want to get out the pigments, so you need to go and bleach it from the roots. And it might be good for the outside of the klaf to be white, but for the mokum maksiva, the inside is not. And usually I tell people it depends on if you want a nice hagba or you want a nice sefer Torah. So white klaf has no mocker in halacha. It's a new thing. Everyone in Eretz always says it's an American thing. I don't know, but it's the idea to know that there's not the most. There is really no mocker in halacha, and it's also, in my opinion, a big chisaron because the ksiva doesn't come out so good. There's an no, psul to have white klaf, no. For the Balkuris, they say it's not good. White on black, it's not easy to read it. Cream is much better. That's what I heard. I don't know. Ask the Balkari. So, there's an inning called Lo Megurad, that's called non-scraped klaf. This is a very choshev hiddur. The Mishabura brings a Chaye Odom, Machlokes with him and the Chasam Sofer in Siman Lamed Beis, I think it's Sif Zayin. He's not Machriya. Rabbi Yashiv is the one who pushed this very stark into the shuk, into the oilam, even though L'chai Rabbi Yashiv wore his first pair of tefillin for the first 75 years, was pashas, yes, scraped, but he did push it in, and is a very, very, very choshev chumrah hiddur to ask for, because she was not machriya. But if it is scraped, that means on the outer level we have our iris, we write on the inside, and we scrape as much as we could, and on the outside there's always these hairs, and the Mechaber writes you're allowed to take off a little shechva, but only kidei la'achlikoi, but sometimes it's so thick, so they scrape up as much as they could. That's what we're talking about. It's called non-scraped klaf, litza. One last nekuda when it comes to...
Tefillin that you buy today.
What's average mean? Average from the Hamoram? No. Most klaf is not scraped. So, no. Until now, all klaf was shlilim. In the last 2 years, the market, or the amount of yidden, or the amount of soifim writing got so big, and I heard that there was a problem with we take from the goyisha places, not from the shlach places, because if there's an ober inside, so we wanted to give birth so we could have another behemoth shecht. So all the shlilim was coming from the goyim, and the goyim, I guess they didn't have the workers didn't want to do it. Weren't getting paid enough. Maybe this is during the times of when they got money from the government, they were saying, so they didn't have enough workers for it. So therefore now there's something called agolim. Agolim is much thicker oiris. so therefore it's much rougher to write on. And but tefillin still, since it's soft and it's smaller skins, so most of it is still shlilim. Dovik, this gets to one nakuda over here of dovik klaf. When you have one big piece of klaf, so the right side, which we write on, is the makom of the neck of the behemoth. So that's the very hairy, rough spot. So there are soifim that they want to go and get 2 pieces of klaf when they're writing a shel yad, which is on 1 piece, and they cut on the left side 2 pieces, and they're madbig it together. I heard that Rabbi Forsheimer in Lakewood is not into it. I mean, the Briskerov wasn't it. He did it. Out of Yom Hazeh they do it. I think Rabbi Nisano, out of the 30 pairs that I know he wrote, I think 29 of them were Dovik. I think I once saw Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's tefillin. They were Dovik. Recently, I just saw Rabbi Moshe Sternbuch's tefillin when I opened them up last week, and he told me he wants a new pair, and he wants Dovik, because he knows that quality, good klaf is from the most important things for a sefer to do. I'll end off with Mirz Hashem. Mirz Hashem, everyone should be zoichet to have kosher tefillin and mezuzahs. There's a lot more to talk about, and Mirz Hashem, I think the time's up.
Yeah.
Okay?
Everyone's appetite. Everyone's appetite is wet right now.